Okay. Two, we can begin. Good evening, everyone. This is the Executive Committee meeting of Manhattan Community Board 5. I'm Nick Athanael. I'll be your chair tonight. The Executive Committee meets once a month to be apprised by each committee chair of actions and or discussions that have taken place at the committee level, which leads to our main purpose, which is to form and finalize the agenda for the full board meeting taking place on Thursday. Members of the public are provided the opportunity to attend this meeting remotely. Anyone who is attending the meeting remotely as a non-member may sign in as an attendee. The Executive Committee seldom takes action at this meeting. However, on rare occasions and in emergency situations, we'll do so. This evening, we have 3 such actions. Reason being that there was no quorum at the end of the committee meetings for the Land Use Committee and the BEX Committee. However, the members that attended those meetings still deliberated, prepared, and recommended a resolution based on their findings to be voted tonight by the Executive Committee. At that meeting, there was an opportunity was given also for the public to comment. So let's do attendance really quick, and then we'll go into the items that require a vote. I will do attendance according to the hybrid matrix. So in attendance tonight in person, we'll go around the room. I'm Nick Athanael.
Renee Kinsella.
EJ Kalaparsky.
David Sigmund.
Sam Levy.
Maren Grosnihan.
Craig Sutton.
Leila Logizico.
Present virtually, Vicky.
Vicky Barbero here.
Great. Present virtual will be Aaron and Julie.
Aaron Ford here.
Julie Chu.
And virtual but absent will be Samir.
Hello, Samir India.
Okay, great. Let's start with the resolutions to be voted on tonight. We'll start with land use. Leila.
All right, good evening, everyone. Land use, we are bringing 2 resolutions, as Nick mentioned. We did not have quorum at the committee meeting. The first resolution is actually, so the labeling is actually incorrect. This is not Penn Station Public Ground proposal. The resolution is actually for a consideration of repealing the GPP, the general project plan, that concerns 10 development sites around Penn Station on the grounds that the GPP would actually preclude housing and residential on 4 of these sites. So Community Board 5, as you know, is on record profusely in objecting the GPP under various grounds. It became abundantly clear that although the site of Hotel Penn is now vacant, as the building has been raised, this building under the GPP could not be redeveloped as a housing development. No dwelling unit is permitted on the site under the GPP. So although we were, we've been lamenting the loss of this building, but now that it is torn down, it's a perfect site to actually do a housing development, but the GPP would preclude that. So the committee took it upon themselves to raise this issue and demand that the governor actually retires the GPP, given that it would actually get in the way of accomplishing the goal of CD5 to create more housing. Once again, as you know, the CD5 is on record stating that housing is a pressing issue, and this would actually go against accomplishing any housing goal in our districts. And we did not take a vote, obviously, given that we did not have quorum. We took a survey, and all the members present indicated support of this position.
Does anyone have a conflict on this matter? Any questions to this resolution? Samir, you have a question?
Let me pull it up just so I can read it properly. I was curious about the last whereas clause where it says C5 strongly rejects deliberate zoning limitations that hinder residential use. I don't actually believe that to be the case. We have at points voted no, for example, on repealing the 12 FAR cap in the executive budget, which is a zoning limitation. So I'm curious why we feel like we strongly reject deliberate zoning limitations when that is not the case historically in our votes.
I'm not sure. I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing Samir. I'm not sure I understand the question.
If I understood him, it was about the last whereas, and Samir, correct me if I'm misconstruing what you said. The whereas says that CB5 rejects deliberate zoning limitations that hinder residential use, and he didn't think that was the case. Did I summarize that correctly?
Yeah, that is correct. That is my issue. And the example I gave was that we have in the past voted no on the repeal of the 12 FAR residential FAR cap on the state level, which is a deliberate way to reduce residential zoning. So that's just like one example. Setbacks are another where we've tried to push against lighter setbacks that would allow more residential use. That's why I'm surprised that we think that we always or strongly encourage avoiding restrictions on residential use.
Okay, I will strike it down. Thank you,
Or
Samir.
is it just in the project area?
I will strike it down.
Okay, great. And then
You have another question?
I think the other thing I have is a comment, so never mind. I'll wait until comment.
Okay, any other questions to this resolution? Any comments? Okay, did you want to bundle?
Sure.
Sorry, I just wanted to make my quick comment. I didn't raise my hand fast enough. I think there's a small typo. We say 9-locks. It should be 9-blocks. I believe it's on the second whereas, or maybe the first one. Just a small typo.
It said 9 blocks. That's probably say
Oh,
blocks.
blocks, yes. Thank you.
Sorry to be joking.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Thank
Major
you.
personal
Okay,
space.
9 blocks, singular, 9-block area.
we are on to the
Yeah,
next resolution.
nine block. Okay. Second resolution, this is a proposal by the Department of City Planning for a zoning tax amendment, a citywide zoning tax amendment to permit gaming facilities as a permitted use within specific districts in New York City. Those districts include C4, C5, C6, C7, and C8 districts, which are commercial, as well as manufacturing M1, M2, and M3. This is the 99% of the makeup of Community Board 5. Just a little bit of background. In 2013, the New York State Constitution was amended through an amendment that was put in front of voters that basically allowed the issuance of 7 commercial casino licenses in the state. Subsequently, 4 casino licenses were issued for upstate New York, and now we have another 3 licenses that must be allocated and cited for downstate. The downstate region encompasses New York City, Nassau, Suffolk, Putnam, Rockland, and Westchester counties. In order for a casino license to be evaluated, it must meet 2 criteria. The first one is that it needs to receive the support of a community advisory committee. And secondly, it needs to be conforming to the underlying zoning of the municipality where such casino license application is being made. Currently, New York City does not permit gaming facilities, so it is not permitted anywhere in the city. The Department of City Planning, instead of looking at the merits of the various proposals that have been made in New York, has decided instead to grant a zoning permission for any casino license that received the support of the gaming commission, that is a state entity. That basically would preclude any community input. It would entirely overlook the ULURP process, would deny community boards of the opportunity to weigh in on casino licenses. It would also not put any bulk or height or other type of regulation signage, for example, that you typically see in zoning tax amendments. The committee heard the arguments from the Department of City Planning. City Planning did indicate that the reason why they decided to go this route is that they don't have the bandwidth to actually evaluate the individual application. So rather than this, specific evaluation on the merits of each proposal, they're basically granting a sort of like broad permission. The committee felt it was absolutely unacceptable, and we had previous discussion in once again we did not take a vote given that we did not have quorum, but we did a survey of members present who all supported a resolution to recommend denial of the Department of City Planning proposal for zoning tax amendment to permit any casino or gaming facility use permit for any of the applications that the gaming commission would support.
Does anyone have a conflict on this matter? Any questions to this resolution? Samir?
Yeah, so I read through it earlier. For the 9th whereas clause where we talk about the EAS negative declaration, I'm curious why we think that if, the whole previous text amendment before they removed the section had a negative declaration, why we think that this individual constituent part would. And then additionally, because any gaming facility application does need to go through the State Environmental Quality Review Act, why we think that that would not be good enough. Like, why do we feel like we need an additional EAS now?
So there was an EAS. The EAS for this particular action, we are told, was under the City of Yes for economic opportunity. But at the same time, the negative declaration for the City of Yes on economic opportunity does not have anything about gaming. The only thing that it says is that, it was considered and now it's no longer part of this particular action. So we do not know whether there's a positive or negative declaration. It may be, and we asked for DCP to actually show us the data, but basically they're saying, well, we don't have anything to say. We don't have anything more to show. Basically, we did evaluate it, we did take it out, and now we're claiming that one equates the other. Now on why is the state environmental review not good enough? It's because simply it doesn't look at the same things. And the environmental review that is going to be undertaken by the state is going to look at vastly different criteria and is not going to look at any of the specifics and will not put any zoning specific criteria. For example, there will be no bulk requirement, no signage requirement, whether we like signage or we don't. Typically this is what the city does, and each municipality knows what is contextual. So a casino may look a certain way in Queens and may look a different way in Manhattan, so that it remains contextual with its surroundings and its existing context. And basically what the city is saying is that we don't want anything to do with this, and anything can go. Another issue is that it would circumvent the special permit for hotels, where basically a hotel would be deemed accessory use and would be permitted as of right, with, no input, whereas, you know, any hotel today has to go through, a special permit. So, you know, those are, you know, environmental reviews are, I mean, they're similar in name only. They actually really accomplish very, very different, purposes.
Any other questions?
That makes
Looks
sense. Thank you.
Like a sovereign issue that the state takes precedent over the city, or the state hasn't made that claim like they would on a GPP or something?
So, you know, the state has not commented on how the city is going about it, but basically the city is telling us, you know, we have, I think there's a total of 11 casino applications. 9 of them are in New York City. Currently, it's not a permitted use, and the department is saying we don't have the bandwidth to do 9 Europe's. So short of that, we're basically saying if any of those 9 wins, we're fine with it, and it can be anything that this application wants to be. You know, whereas, you know, to take a comparison, Madison Square Garden has, I don't know, like 60 or 70 pages of what they can or cannot do. Signage has to be this way, the entrance has to be that way, there has to be counters, there has to be benches, there has to be
Right.
adequate space for pedestrian flow, you know, like all that good stuff that should go. And, you know, a casino will have a massive impact. And I think it's really prudent that the city remains involved and says what, you know, these should look like, and site specific.
Any other questions to the resolution? Any comments? Okay, seeing none, let's take these two to a vote.
Okay, Nick,
Yes.
Leila,
Yes.
Craig,
Yes.
Mary is yes, Sam,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
EJ,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Vicky, yes, Aaron,
Yes. Yes, do you get me?
yes, Julie,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, next up, Bex, Renee.
Thank you, Nick. So I think probably everybody knows, in October, the mayor issued that, he is limiting, families with children to 60 days in shelters. And, after that time, families were going to have to reapply for their shelter spot. It means that families would likely be moved to another shelter with no control over their location within the city. There was a joint statement issued by Legal Aid and the Coalition for the Homeless, which specifically condemned that ruling. And really sort of highlighted the chaos that would cause for children, just in terms of how they would get to their schools, what that commute would look like. Just sort of the chaos that would cause for the children who are just sort of getting settled in their schools, making friends, what the commutes would look like. And so we heard all of that. We don't have a lot of schools in our district. We know that, but we do have a lot of the hotels, the families in our district. We have the Row, the Watson, the Stewart, the Roosevelt, the Redberry, on and on and on. We understand about 3,500 families have been issued these notices. And while we recognize that we're treating families a little bit differently than single individuals who have 30-day notices, we felt that, you know, the children and their education really need to take priority. And so all of the members present supported a resolution in favor of asking the mayor to, urging him to find a way to, waive the 60-day rule.
Does anyone have a conflict with this matter? Any questions to the resolution? Any comments? Craig?
Yeah, I think one thing, one point that was made in the resolution that I think is very important to harp on is that it's possible because of the 60-day rule, that a student could go to 5 different schools in 1 year. And that just, to me, it's just disruptive on for many reasons. So I think this is a very important resolution. So I'll be voting yes.
Any other comments, Mary?
Yeah, I'd just like to say I'm totally in favor of this. It's being implemented today or tomorrow,
Yeah.
and the ramifications cannot be understated.
So this is being
Overstated.
implemented tomorrow?
Today.
Today? Should we send this from the executive committee or wait to full vote or full board to vote on this?
Yes.
Just, generally, what's
I'm looking
procedure?
to Vicky.
We send it from exec and it's ratified on Thursday.
Yeah. Okay. Other comments, Samir?
Just wanted to agree, this is super important, and I'm glad that we're writing this resolution with such strong language. So thank you.
Great. Any other comments? Okay, let's take this to a vote.
Nick,
Yes.
Leila,
Yes.
Craig,
Absolutely.
Mary, yes, Sam,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
EJ,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Vicky,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay, now let's proceed with committee reports, starting with Parks. Right.
Thanks. We had one resolution. It's the annual roster events from Madison Square Park Conservancy. They come in every year to present. Not too many changes, a few changes, a few additions rather. But they have the normal stuff. They have the art talks. They're gonna have a spring fling in the park. Pup Parents Day for canine lovers. They're adding a summer fam jam, which is a family-friendly concert. Horticulture programs, public volunteer days, seasonal displays, sustainability programs. They're having three, and actually that should read three, Marisa. It says midway through the first, second, third, whereas it says it will host two fundraisers. It actually is three, sorry. It's a carryover from last year. They're having three fundraisers, a party in the park fundraiser on the Oval Lawn, Big Apple Barbecue on May 20th. As a reminder, they brought this back last year, but it was not in the same form as the old Big Apple barbecue that we all thought was gross and detested. The old barbecue was 2 days. They closed the whole park. They had pits all over, loud music. This is just one night for 3 hours, on a Monday night, May 20th. It's a small one night thing. It's only 30 restaurants, a couple of grills, the restaurants, as I said, is local, so we had it last year, they had it last year, and it was fine, that we didn't get any complaints. The Taste of Asia fundraiser, and that's in October. As a reminder, Bryant Park for its programming does not get any money from the city, so they rely upon these fundraisers. They're also allowed up to 4 marketing events a year. They will come back to us if and when they have these marketing events. They do this throughout the year. Generally, everybody was fine with this. Everybody was enthusiastic about the programming, and it would pass 14,000.
Okay. Does Len, you have anything else to report?
We did have another item for discussion.
Okay.
We did talk about the proposed I'm sorry, I need to gather my thoughts. No, it's good, sorry. The proposed public realm improvements around Penn Station. This is an initiative that was actually put together by ESD, the Empire State Development Corporation. It is connected to the GPP, but not directly part of the GPP. The goal of this initiative was actually the creation. So it actually came from the creation of a task force for public realm improvements, and that was put together by ESD. And the recommendations of the ESD is actually to focus the first phase of improvement of public realm on 32nd Street. There was actually a presentation of these recommendations at a meeting that was actually open to the public for the first time, given that now the CAC rules on public accessibility and transparency have changed. And it became abundantly clear that all those who commented on the recommendation were actually opposed to it. Everybody believed that focusing on 32nd Street, which is it's not a through street. It is not very heavily pedestrian used by pedestrians as opposed to avenues was actually a poor choice. And another area of concern was that, given that we do not know what kind of development is going to happen on 32nd Street, we could actually spend 50 million, which is what ESD is suggesting will be invested, to actually have it ripped off if other type of development comes to this area. So, we did discuss, what that would entail. The committee, felt that it was not right to issue a recommendation. We'll continue to work on that.
Okay, thank you. Transportation, EJ?
Yep. So we tackled congestion pricing. We have one reso, which consists of the comment and testimony that we plan to submit to the MTA's 60-day comment period that they currently have open following the release on November 30th of the last year on the Transit Mobility Review Board's whole structure recommendation for congestion pricing. I think that at full board, I'll probably need to provide a little bit of a history of the process and where the base toll and exemptions that the TMRB ended up recommending and how that leads to, I think, the comment and testimony that we ended up adopting and plan to submit. I could briefly cover it right now, but I think it'll probably be important to provide that context at full board.
Is there anything you think you need to arm the executive committee with for discussion purposes at full board?
No, I think it's important to put it in context, which is that the committee did not debate whether congestion pricing is a good idea. It's been state law since 2019. So it's not an up or down vote on whether we love congestion pricing. It's a, detailed commentary on the rates and exemption, based on the recommendation of rates and exemptions that came out of the TMRB and a kind of detailed breakdown of concerns and implementation recommendations for the MTA as they implement the tolling program at the starting rates and really importantly, how they execute it going forward from that. So I feel like that's going to be important context to provide to the full board and the members of the public, so they don't think we're about to have a vote on congestion pricing good or congestion pricing bad.
Definitely. Maybe we can make that clear in the agenda item itself.
I'd be open to that. By making the agenda item specifically refer to the TMRB toll and exemption recommendation, we've tried to do that. I'm happy to adjust that to make it even more specific. If there are any recommendations for doing so, but I would definitely be open to that. Maybe by adding specifically that we're providing testimony to the comment period and that it'll focus on concerns and our own recommendations for execution. Something to that effect.
Sure, but you may even want to say something like, since congestion pricing has been law since 2019, maybe phrase it that way. Do you think that might make it even clearer?
I'll certainly say that. Do we put that in the agenda?
Okay. I think we're taking your concern to heart. You don't want the public misled to think that this is going to be an opportunity to dispute congestion pricing.
Right.
So if we could take a little bit of liberty with the agenda item, that might help.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I can send you language to update the agenda item.
Okay. Bex, is there anything else that Bex wants to
Can
report?
I just ask,
Of
so
course.
do we have any idea what the contours of our testimony will be? Or is that to be determined?
Oh, no, it's all written out here. I can summarize it if you want me to.
Sure.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We spent a fair amount of time arriving at this. Oh, no. I figured I would summarize it here the way we kind of read those anyway. At any rate, without, I'll go through the history, but the TMRB debated for months, had a series of meetings, arrived at a final tolling recommendation, which, not to belabor it, it's $15 per day for passenger vehicles entering the zone. It's a 75% discount on during the night if you're outside of the prime time of day. It's a higher toll of $24 to $36 for trucks. It's a toll of $750 for motorcycles. This is all to be leveled no more than once per day per vehicle, no matter how many times you enter the zone. It's only upon entering the zone, not driving around in the zone and not leaving the zone. It does levy a toll of $125 per taxi ride, that is per ride, for each ride that occurs anywhere in the zone. And it is $250 per ride for any Ubers or black cars. Residents of the zone who are low income, and this was in the state law, get a full tax credit, what they are told. And additionally, the TMRB added that low income residents who live anywhere get a discount after 10 trips per calendar month. So that's the base recommendation that came from the TMRB. Obviously, like I said, the committee did not debate whether or not congestion pricing is a good idea. We also, for context, talked about congestion pricing in multiple committee meetings as we followed the deliberations of the TMRB. So this was, there was a series of committee meetings where we had discussion, where we opened it up to comment from members of the public, and where we were waiting for this TMRB recommendation to comment on. So without weighing in on, whether congestion pricing is a good idea, we also, wanted to respond to the base toll recommendation by, I'm trying to figure out the right way to structure this. We wanted to respond to the recommendation by expressing those concerns that we raised and the implementation concerns. And we decided as a committee that debating the specific base toll amount and the specific, exemptions that the TMRB actually told us they intended to minimize was less important and less critical and less a good use of our time to, haggle amongst ourselves whether economically $13 was going to be better or $17 was going to be better. Less a good use of our time than to express our sense of how it should be implemented, and even more importantly, how it should learn and adapt to the actual results of the experimental scheme after they go into effect. So, with that context, over the course of our debate, we identified our main consensus concerns with the implementation and the effects that we're worried about happening under the program. And we wanted to enumerate those, and we wanted to make sure to highlight how they should be studied and adapted to by MTA once we actually start to see the effects of congestion pricing and whether or not it's actually pulling off any of its intended goals. So our testimony, very briefly, supports the goals of less congestion and improved transit funding, which were identified by the state law. It supports all the accommodation for low-income drivers, particularly those who live in the zone and will get a full tax credit, but also additionally, the discount that you get after 10 rides for low-income drivers coming from anywhere. Our concerns that we enumerated started with concern about the burden of the program falling disproportionately on residents who live in the zone for a variety of reasons, specifically for residents of the zone who perhaps live near the boundary and may not, for various reasons, be able to inelastically reduce their number of car trips in the same way that someone commuting from outside the zone might, or frankly, the way that someone perhaps living further from the boundary might still be able to drive 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 5 blocks to work, to family, et cetera, without incurring the toll at all. But someone who lives near the boundary would actually incur, a much higher cost just because of their proximity. It's something that we felt like wasn't studied and wasn't very well understood. There was concern expressed by the committee about whether or not there were going to be inflationary effects on goods and services that are provided inside the district because of the cost of those trucks and goods and personnel coming into this district by truck or by car, and the way that might get passed on to businesses in the zone. There was concern about what the effect would be on property values in the zone, and availability and how the increased costs were going to affect things like hospital services, which are already under financial pressure in the zone. So we explicated that those concerns around burden. We pointed out that the only way to know some of this stuff after the system is going to go live is to see data transparently reported by the MTA, and to see an openness to adjustment by the MTA based on that data, based on understanding whether the goals are being accomplished and whether there are externalities and side effects. And we listed a number of ways that we wanted to see data being collected. Is congestion actually being reduced? Is the demand or the number of trips over the boundary by residents, is it elastic or is it inelastic? Are they able to adapt to driving over the boundary less, or if they're not able to adapt, are they getting a harsher burden of the overall cost? We wanted to see air quality monitored throughout the zone on a block by block basis, so that we can understand whether air quality is being reduced or whether it's actually going up as unintended side effects in certain locations. We pointed out that we would have liked to see in the TMRB evaluation more evaluation of more dynamic pricing schemes instead of the $15 flat cost, which the TMRB seemed to assume from the beginning that was what they should levy, perhaps for simplicity, perhaps because those parameters were given to them. But we would have liked to see dynamic pricing that you see in other types of cities like Stockholm and Singapore evaluated as well. We tried to be particularly clear-headed about the fact that this will be adapted after it goes live, the same way that you see subway fares go up, over time, and that the structure of the program may need to be adapted as well. It might not stick with a totally flat fee and a total minimum of exemptions. You may need to see additional exemptions being added, say, for clean vehicles, based on some of the data that's coming in. You may need to see prices going up if the congestion isn't actually going down. We were pretty clear-headed about the fact that things might need to be adjusted up or down. But our conclusion was that, ultimately it's an experiment. Despite these models, we have really no idea exactly what's going to happen when it goes live. And the most important thing is for the MTA to be open and transparent about the data it's collecting, sharing that with the community, and having a willingness to adjust all the levers that they have in their power so that the program can be successful and so that the burden isn't falling disproportionately on the neighborhood. That's the crux of our testimony. That was the focus of our discussion, and the committee adopted that as our testimony unanimously, 14-0.
Aaron?
EJ, I'm curious if you guys cover this, but in terms of like the discussion on the scalable pricing, how I think it is a New York specific rule where if you're a New York Easy Pass holder, your fee is less than if you're an out-of-state car that, the scanner just picks up the license. Is that in the plans? Right. So if you're a car entering the zone and you don't have an Easy Pass and you've never gone through a toll, is it going to bill you a different amount than an Easy Pass New York resident holder?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
I imagine that will operate almost exactly the way it does, elsewhere using these paths.
Thanks.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that in my summary of the, you do get a credit for, you do get a credit for entering the zone directly via any of the 4 tunnels that go directly into the zone. You do not get a credit for any of the upstream bridges, like, the George Washington Bridge. You would end up paying that toll twice.
Mary,
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm sorry to make this comment at the community meeting, but if we look at the London experiment, it worked initially beautifully, but when they removed the caps on the Uber type of vehicles, now the traffic is actually slower than it was. And the city is poised to remove the cap on the licenses of the Uber vehicles. Is that something that has been contemplated, or are we gonna look at that separately?
I mean, I think it's an example of exactly why we think that the data needs to be transparently published
But we
to
don't
the
want to
public.
do anything
And
proactively. This has been proven to be a death knell for outcomes.
It was discussed.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's complicated because I think as we discovered, as we were doing the research and getting more and more into it, that the potential consequences based on other cities are so peculiar to those cities
Mhm.
that it was hard to make some sort of statement that obviously London is different from, let's say, Singapore, and there are so many different reasons that those 2 cities have worked differently, particularly when it comes to like Ubers and private vehicles. And I think the feeling was that to outline the general concerns and items to watch, rather than try to make a statement about potentially prescriptive fixes prior to seeing it implemented.
yeah, we focused on the effects to the community as opposed to starting to try to guess or measure ourselves whether certain decisions were going to have certain effects, because again, you know, it's all modeling, it's all predictive. And none of us on the board are currently traffic engineers.
And
But
there was plenty of diverse opinion
Yeah.
on
Okay.
each item.
yes,
Leila,
Was there any discussion about exempting residents of the zone? And if so, what was the tenor of this discussion of the committee?
there was spirited debate and a variety of opinions. You know, some members, you know, again, we focused on the concern about the effect on the members of the zone as opposed to specifically calling for a particular exemption to be added or a particular, you know, exemption to be removed. That was the crux of all of our discussion about the burden falling on residents of the zone. We did get explicit that we supported all the accommodation that the state law and the TMRB added to reduce the cost for residents of the zone. But, you know, we didn't, at the end of the day, come to a consensus to say, you know, let's, you know, everybody wants to exempt members of the zone or nobody wants any exemptions, because I think there's a variety of even on the committee, there's a variety of perspectives about, you know, whether you should maximize the number of exemptions or totally exempt members of the zone, or any exemption would, you know, quote unquote, gut the entire scheme and reduce the efficacy of congestion pricing entirely. At the end of the day,
But there is a different rate for residents of the zone? I thought it was. No, sir.
residents of this, no, everyone pays the same rate. Residents who live in the zone who are under a particular income line, which is $60,000, get a full tax credit for any of the costs that they have paid for the toll. So in the final analysis, they will have net paid nothing, you know, with the tax credit. Only residents who are under a particular income line.
Are you starting to think about, I know that there's a lot of talk about resident parking passes for just above. Is that something that you have talked about in this context?
I mean, it's something that we've talked about in other contexts and it's something that came up in this context as well, again, without really understanding, we didn't, end up putting anything about that into our testimony on this. It's something we've discussed, but there isn't, we didn't try to forge a particular consensus.
It's not part of congestion pricing.
Right, it's
so,
not, it wasn't a
Do you think
separate
it's-
action.
do you think everybody's gonna head up there? Because
There's so much debate as to whether or not that will happen. And then there's a complete lack of consensus in terms of whether or not that will happen. There's a school of thought that everyone's gonna park on 61st Street. There's a school of thought that those cars won't even leave home at all because they'll all be taking trains and,
And
from now
you
on.
get charged $15 per day for the car.
No, I think, well, right,
There's no sitting fee. I don't think so.
Oh,
No, there's-
so
no.
once you're in the zone, so if you're.
sorry, I may have misunderstood your question. You were talking about people parking north of the zone so as not to get the fee.
No.
Yeah,
So that question was about people not entering the zone at all to avoid the fee.
okay.
Your question,
So you
I think
only
would have been
pay when
different.
you enter the zone.
You only
But if you're a
pay-
Resident and, God forbid, have an automobile, which is highly unpopular these days, you get charged when you enter the zone.
you
So
get
if
charged once on any day when you drive into the zone. If you stay parked in the zone
you're in
for
the
a
zone,
year, you never
Or
pay
if you
anything.
drive in the
If you
zone,
drive in the zone, you
you
never
don't-
pay
you
anything.
never
If
pay.
you drive around in the
So if you
zone
are-
and drive out of the zone, you don't
If
pay
you're
that
a
day at all.
Uber vehicle and you park the vehicle in the zone, you charge your passengers $2.50 per ride,
Yes.
but you personally, your own vehicle doesn't get charged at all.
Correct.
How is that fighting congestion? I suppose
Because-
to understand.
Because those
So you're gonna
vehicles,
have
because,
thousands of
no, I'm
cars.
sorry, and I should have, and this is why I may have to, go through the recommendation in detail at full board. Those vehicles, taxis and for hire vehicles have already had a congestion fee on all of their rides for several years now. I
Which
forget when
has,
it
which
went
has
into
not
effect.
reduced congestion at
Mhm.
all.
Mhm.
So once again, I fail to understand how that is going to,
I suspect it's reduced it to some degree. I believe the congestion fee gets added to any,
when it's a passenger
trip.
that
Yes.
pays.
it gets passed,
But
passenger, yeah.
So given that it's been put in place for a while, we have data. What has been the trend since this fee was introduced? Have we seen a reduction in the number of Uber and car sharing rides?
My understanding is it was only during COVID and
I-
then has since gone up.
I don't think so. So.
I mean, I think you may be correct that, I don't know what it is, yeah, reduced.
So,
I think part of the problem, Layla, is that there has been something of a misnomer about calling it congestion pricing. That has been a very effective way of selling what is in fact a toll.
yeah,
And I think that ultimately, when we sat down and looked at what the TMRB was sort of giving us as a given, the given was we need to raise this kind of money.
okay, so we're not trying, because, and that's the part also that I struggle with. I am philosophically opposed to taxing bad behavior. I don't think that taxing a polluting factory is an effective way to go about dealing with pollution. And I think that becoming dependent on a behavior that is actually not a good behavior is not good policy, generally speaking. I'm just, making a sort of like general comment on, so if the goal is to reduce congestion, this is one goal, but if the goal is just to raise funds, then, and it's at the expense of a behavior that we consider to be problematic, because driving vehicles, does cause, greenhouse gas emissions. And we have some pretty, stringent targets that we need to meet, to be in compliance with the Paris Accord. This is what I'm more interested in, and it looks like this particular plan is not taking this consideration really seriously. So I understand that, we need money, but and we understand that, once again, if I understand correctly, the funds will only be for capital expenditures of the MTA. It cannot be for operations, which is good. But at the same time, I struggle to see how this influx of funding is really going to be put to good use to improve, commuter rail so that people want to get out of their cars. Not that they need to, or that it is so prohibitive or so punishing, but that they want to because it becomes the better option. And, the automobile is very seductive, and to get people out of their cars, I don't know that this is the right pricing policy in place.
So that debate about the merits of the policy in terms of whether it'll accomplish the goals, that are specified in the state law is sort of specifically what this comment doesn't wade into, so to speak. This comment takes the state law that, whatever the merits of it being, will it reduce congestion? Is it the appropriate policy for reducing congestion? Is it the right way to spend money? That was all defined by 2019 state law. And so our particular testimony at this point and the MTA's pending decision about, setting the toll and implementing the program really doesn't have any agency to decide that at this particular point in time.
But
So our
at the same-
commentary,
At the same time, I think that not commenting on the impact that this is going to have on Uber and Lyft vehicles, I think is, I personally wrestle with that, because I think that, this particular board is exactly poised to actually address this with a recommendation. And I feel that the recommendation is going to actually encourage that kind of use, which is actually causing a lot of congestion, especially in our districts. So, I think, and listen, I am everything, I walk as a pedestrian, I ride bicycles, very timidly, but,
Horses.
sometimes I do. I drive automobiles, and I take the subway and I take the train, I do it all. And, I'm a huge fan of public transportation. I think this is really the future and what we need to fight for. And, and I do use Uber and Lyft from time to time, and I really feel that we should make a stronger recommendation as to how we're going to limit the congestion from these particular vehicles. Because once again, if you look at it big picture, residents of the zone who have an automobile are not the guilty party here, if we want to consider that someone is guilty in this equation.
I guess I'm not sure what your comment is. Are you suggesting that the TMRB should have set the toll higher for those?
Let me see if I can help focus this.
Yeah.
So do you think her point about not addressing livery cars is within the scope of what was reviewed and what the comments are about?
It is not within the scope of what we debated and what we set as the parameters of what we were going to comment on for this 60-day comment
But
period.
is it within the scope of what comments the agency is asking for?
No,
Okay,
that's
so,
my understanding, no.
all right, so your comments wouldn't be appropriate to respond.
Yeah, I'm not
this
gonna
case.
belay that. I'm gonna call Jay. We can do that offline.
But because I was saying, if your comments were relevant, you could make a friendly amendment at full board, we could discuss it then, the board could vote. But it's not relevant to what the scope of the comment is. I think it's outside of what we can.
I mean, the board did make a recommendation on how Uber and Lyft will be impacted. So I think it is within scope, but we can continue the conversation.
sorry.
I was gonna ask something completely different. And again, this might be outside the purview, but because we represent CB5, and I believe CB5 will be disproportionately impacted by this.
Sure.
Was there any discussion about extending this zone to include the entirety of Manhattan?
That's not within the,
Okay,
yeah, that would have to alter the state law.
sorry.
It was reduced. It started at 96, it was reduced.
All right, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I just want to go on record. It's to state the obvious that CB5 is going to be disproportionately impacted by this. And that might be something worth revisiting in the future.
letter says that.
What's that?
The letter says.
It does, okay.
Sorry, did you call my name?
Did you want to say something about this?
Yeah, I was just gonna quickly say that it is true that we'll be disproportionately impacted both in the negative, but also the positive ways. We have a ton of trains lines that will get huge improvements from this funding. And the reason that they reduced the area is because so many people drive from the Upper West and Upper East sides that we would have actually lost a ton of funding because you only get charged when you enter. So they need it to be a 59 so they can charge all those people coming from the Upper West and Upper East sides.
That's an interesting point. So let's go
I
back.
didn't understand what you said. I don't understand.
He said it was reduced from 90 something to 59 because if the zone extended all the way to 96th Street, people driving from 95 to 25 would not get charged. Whereas now those people driving from uptown to downtown will get charged and be
I was
discouraged.
Suggesting it include the entire island.
Right, then, yeah.
Yes.
But I do want to finish this discussion. Why do you think that your comments are within the scope of the comment period?
Because it is part of the recommendation of the board. The board did make recommendations. They said, you know, the price is gonna be this, delivery vehicles are gonna be charged that. Such people are going to be exempt, and therefore we can comment on all of this. We cannot comment on should it be 59th Street or all the way uptown. That is not part of the recommendation. But the recommendations are very clearly, how do we implement, how much do we charge, who do we charge, how many times do we charge? And this is what my comments are. But, you know, once again, I don't want to belabor that.
Sam?
So may I just ask, because it again, I think some of this was covered in the discussion. If you were to focus on the question of the pricing, given your initial comments about the fact that you don't think that the tax will reduce the volume, are you suggesting that the problem is in fact, we haven't reduced the numbers per Mary's comments, we haven't reduced the numbers of Ubers and Lyft so that they should be restricted as a class?
Well, I mean, you are the one who said that, you know, we should see it as a tax. It's not really, the goal is not necessarily to reduce congestion. The goal is to raise funds. If I understand
The goal is
correctly,
both. I mean, the charge of the board was to accomplish both goals.
But I want to get back.
Again, I'm not sure exactly what you're suggesting as a potential solution. If the scope of what the MTA gets to decide and what we're commenting on is the levels of the tolls and the types of exemptions. If there's a suggestion along the lines of, okay, it shouldn't be a per ride fee added to these cars, but it should instead be a per day fee or a higher per ride fee or something, or a total exemption, in any direction. If that was the debate that we're having, then I do believe it would be in scope. If it's something more along the lines of a different type of policy that, like Sam is talking about, like we should be, medallioning Ubers or reducing the total number of them across the city, I think it would be out of scope. So if we're talking about a different policy, I think it's out of scope. If we're talking about the fact that like you'd like to see specifically a different toll imposed within the strictures of this tolling program, I think we could talk about what a friendly amendment might be.
Yeah. And once again, especially as it applies to these types of vehicles, because, I really think that they will they cause the congestion. And,
But I get,
once again, and I don't have a friendly amendment like
okay,
ready to,
Mhm.
like, and, maybe we can just talk offline and
sure.
you can maybe help me better, grasp this really complicated, issue and, it's, I think we can work together so that at the full board, we have, something,
Yeah.
constructive and productive to contribute
And within scope.
and within, always.
Okay, good. That was great. I enjoyed hearing the debate. Does Bex have anything else to add?
We had, the, senior advisor, the mayor's, from the mayor's office for mental illness. He spoke to us. We did not take, any action on that. It was advisory. He's gonna come back. We're gonna gather more information. We're gonna hear from other people on that issue. So, we just gathered information. So,
Okay. The only thing I'll say about SLAP didn't have a meeting. The only thing that SLAP had to do this month was to review another batch of cannabis applications. And that was done in a black and white fashion based on the guidelines. So there wasn't really a need for a meeting on that, David.
So we didn't need to then have a reso at the full board?
No. Great.
So you reviewed, were they all denied, how many, how many did you get, how many, roughly, how many were denied, were there any approved?
Does anybody, did you see
None
that?
were approved, all were denied.
And we are looking at reconvening the task force to see if any adjustments need to be made. We're still in the information gathering phase, but we may be ready soon to reconvene and collect data on what we've been seeing. That's it for committee reports. The only other thing I wanted to mention before we open for public comment. Renee mentioned to me that one of her committee members has excessive absences. Who's keeping track of committee absences?
The kid. So I don't remember his name.
We don't need to speak about one individual, but I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that we're still keeping track of
Yeah,
attendance.
I am, and we had, just so you know, we had actually inquired with the person.
Okay. But-
And I spoke to Vicky about it.
Bigger than just this one individual, are there any attendance letters that need to go
Not right
out?
now.
Anyone? No.
I have to update it. I'm a little behind, but I will report at the next meeting.
Okay. Great. Is that on a calendar year basis or a rolling year basis?
April to term basis,
Okay.
April to March.
So we didn't miss anything by the end of the year. Great, Sam?
Yeah, I just wanted to use that segue as an opportunity to again raise a concern that I raised about 6 months ago. And would like to do it again about the state legislation around the open meetings and the requirement for quorum in person. It just seems to me still 6 months down the track that the in-person requirement is arbitrary. It's unnecessarily punitive. It indicates a complete lack of understanding of the way that we work and live in the 21st century. It prevents us from having a more diverse board. It is very difficult for people to leave their offices in some case, several of whom are up here, or leave their place of employment. And the fact that they're not counted towards a quorum feels to me at this point in this day and age crazy. So I just wanted to throw it out there that I want to implore that our state legislators to look at this sooner rather than later. We have a board that should reflect the diversity of the neighborhood and the community district. And it's very hard to do that when you're asking people, when the state is asking people to leave their place of employment to attend meetings in person and to not have their voices counted or their votes counted as part of quorum if they can't attend. And I'll raise it again if better at board in front of our state politicians, but I just feel like we've had 6 months. They said that they were going to look at it. I'd love to know what they've looked at.
Marisa, do you know anything about this? Isn't something sunsetting at some point?
Yeah, the current open meetings law sunsets at the end of June, the end of the legislative session. So they will need to take some action. The action could just be renew it as it is, or they could change it. So they have to be looking at it this legislative session regardless.
Craig?
Didn't Assembly, maybe Marisa knows, didn't Assemblyman Boris actually propose something? And it's actually to basically eliminate the quorum requirement, eliminate the in-person quorum requirement. So I think there is a bill out there. I don't know if it's going anywhere.
There's more than. There's
Yeah.
more than one.
And I know Harvey
Yeah.
Epstein has one also for CECs, which I think also applies to
Yes.
community boards. I don't know if any of these things are going anywhere. That's a separate issue. But I know they're out there and if you go on the state assembly website, you can actually see the bill. If you go into Boris's name or Epstein's name, you can actually see the bill. But the question, to your point, the question that we might ask ourselves is over the next cycle, do we want to take up, I know you've spoken about in your committee, a resolution that actually makes suggestions or supports certain bills, like Boris's bill or Epstein's bill or something like that. So we might want to do that.
Assemblyman Boris, representative came to Bex. It
Yeah.
wasn't right. He was still sort of finagling. So they're gonna come back to us, right?
The,
So as you know, the legislature just started. All the legislators are actually reintroducing bills or introducing new bills as you know, the legislature gets underway. This is a good time for us to reach out to those who do have bills. To make sure that if we like the bills, that they're sponsored by Senate partner. And, not all the bills are going to win, so maybe at some point they should consolidate. And I think that they're all very agreeable to that, I think that when, Assemblymember Boris and, Epstein, came, they basically said, my bill is not against his bill, it's just, this is my version, so I think we're gonna have to tell them to, move this along. So that indeed we can have a more adapted legislation, so that we can continue to conduct business.
can someone remind me how we addressed this the first time? Was there a task force about this? So we should probably reconvene the task force.
Sure. It started off as other people. And then it wound up going to me for how we implement. I think there was one before me. I was the one, my task force was the one who actually came up with our rules. So it might have been a separate task.
There's
You might
like
have
two
been thinking,
residents, right? There's two residents.
there were a couple of resolutions.
Do you think it's within the scope of the task force to comment on what we're seeing now, or is that something that needs to
The
be
task
tweaked
force-
or a new task force?
The task force that I ran was solely to see how we implement the state law. It was not to comment on the state law itself. So it's probably different, but we could take it up.
Do you think that the research that the task force did to come up with your recommendations is relevant to us commenting on potential legislation?
I think what's more relevant is data on our attendance and how the current committee feels about it. I think the past is the past, or sorry, 6 months ago or 8 months ago is one thing. I think the last 6 to 8 months is a totally different data set. I don't think I think it's fine to use the same task force, or we can see who else wants to be on it, because there's a lot of new members, so. We can talk about it.
Yeah, can I just raise a practical issue? So it's always very nerve wracking if we're going to have quorum or not have quorum at our full board meeting. Last month, you sent out a unrelated memo, but at the end you asked if anybody is not attending to reply. Going forward, if you could just coordinate with me, because it's much more helpful to have people reply affirmatively. Because I spent a good deal of time sending out last minute text messages to people who didn't reply to either. So maybe you and I could talk offline and just coordinate that through me. That would be great.
Is there any new business for the committee? Any members of the public? You can raise your hand now. Brenda has nothing.